Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more buckshot testing, and today we've got another combo that one of you guys suggested that we bring out here and try, and it's definitely a pretty interesting one because these shells have been known to perform pretty well from our previous testing through chokes in this rough constriction range, but we've never tried them through this particular choke, so we should in theory get a decent pattern from it, but we're just going to have to see what happens. But as for the shells we've brought today, I got out some more of the good old Remington Express buckshot loads, but these ones are the 12 gauge 3-inch 10 pellet load of triple lot, moving about 1225 feet per second. And we've tested these shells a number of times through a bunch of different chokes and setups. They've always given us some great patterns, except for when we run them through chokes with not quite enough constriction, but that shouldn't be an issue for today's setup, so we'll see what they can give us. But as for today's setup, I brought out the Mossberg 835 Ulti-Mag. It's got a 28-inch barrel on it, and for the choke, I threw in the stock Ulti-Full turkey choke. It's a 695 constriction, which is very much your typical 12 gauge kind of full choke range, but for an 835, this is definitely considered a turkey choke since these are overboard to a 10 gauge bore diameter. But we've seen a number of nice performances from those triple lot express shells through 690 to 695 ish choke ranges before, so this should be a pretty decent performing combination, even though this is technically supposed to be a turkey choke. But as for today's test, everything is set up the same as usual. We've got the big sheet of paper at 40 yards, the chronograph so we can get our velocity, and the templates so we can lay up over our results. So let's get you guys a view of that target and see if we can get another good performance out of these Remington Express triple lot loads, but through this stock 695 turkey choke in the 835 today. I'm thinking we should see something good, but let's take our shot and see what we get. Alright, that shell gave us 1250 through the chrono. Boss claim is 1225. However, we typically see right around mid 1200s from these, so that's nothing out of the ordinary at all. But what kind of a pattern did they give us down there at 40 through that 695 Ulti-Full? Let's go check it out and see. Alright, so now we're down here at our 40-yard paper, and this is what we got. And it's definitely some pretty interesting results. The white dot was the point of aim, the paper's 36 inches wide, and we did have all 10 pellets on the paper here, but we might have favored just a touch high overall. However, our pattern is pretty interesting. We had a nice little clump of 4 pellets right there on the top edge of our white dot, but the rest of them are kind of strung out a little bit all over the place here. I did measure the farthest 2 points across, which is kind of diagonal left to right there, and that gave us 23 inches of spread at 40 yards. Not the worst, but definitely far from the best that we've seen from these shells. We've gotten down in the mid to low teens several times as far as our spread goes, 12 inches, 14 inches, that type of stuff. So we know these are capable of some very nice patterns. However, this looks to me like we kind of blew our pattern out a little bit. I think we had a nice little centralized core going with that nice little hot zone right there in the middle, but the rest of them kind of just scattered. And although we have tested these through chokes in the 690 and 695 range before with some great results, this is an 835, which means that it's overboard to a 10 gauge diameter, and I have a sneaking suspicion that the pellets were allowed to spread out just a little bit since they don't have a wad in that bore, and when they hit the choke, it kind of jammed them up and constricted them down pretty quick right at the end of the barrel and kind of blew the edges of the pattern open. Kind of a theory maybe, but it does make sense based on what I've seen from all of our other tests where we've kind of blown our patterns out. A little bit interesting results where on one hand looks pretty good for a core, but on the other hand the edges aren't so nice. But let's throw a couple templates up and see how it looks instead of just the blank sheet of paper. So first up is our 10-inch circle, and when we put it where our core actually is, we obviously had those 4 nice tight grouped pellets right through the middle there. So 4 out of 10 isn't too bad, but we've seen more from these shells before. But 4 pellets of triple lot at 1250 going down here through a 10-inch circle at 40 yards is going to get the job done perfectly fine for whatever you would need it for. But you can see the rest of those pellets are kind of just scattered around everywhere. So definitely pretty interesting results for our core, but let's throw an animal template up and see how it would look on a hunt. So here's our deer template, and obviously, yes, we absolutely have a dead deer here. 4 of them clumped right through the lungs area there. Absolutely going to be a hammer on that deer, no doubt about it. And you've got a couple pellets around the edges for a little bit of assurance, I guess. So yes, this combo is absolutely good enough for a 40-yard deer hunt, but it might still be a little bit too inconsistent for my taste anyway. If it's what I had, sure, I would absolutely run it. But like I explained earlier, I think we're kind of blowing our pattern out just a little bit with this particular particular choke setup. So I would probably want to test some more shots through it first before I actually made the call. If I wanted to hunt with this one or not, preferably anyway. Plenty good enough for a 40-yard deer hunt, but it's not the tightest we've seen out of them, that's for sure. But let's swap over to the hog template real quick since I already have it out here. Probably going to look the same, but we might as well take a glance at it. And yeah, just like I suspected, it's the same story. Would be good enough for a 40-yard hog hunt all day long. And overall, this is not a bad pattern. We have seen much worse out of much fancier or more expensive shells, but we've also seen way better from these shells, and we know we can get way better through the right choke combo. I just think that choke at the end of an overboard 835 is kind of hurting our pattern performance more than it is helping it. And I believe we've even tried these through the stock 710 turkey full choke as well in that 835, and I think they gave us a better, more consistent pattern than this did. So it seems like if you want to run these in an 835, probably 700 to 710, maybe 715 if you got a choke somewhere in there, might kind of be the ticket from my testing. Either way, this is not horrible. It would still get the job done if you wanted it to, but I kind of thought we might see a little bit better pattern out of it than that. But that's why you test things, because you never quite know what they're going to do until you actually try them. Alright y'all, well, what did you think about those results right there? That's definitely a pretty interesting pattern. It's been a little while since we've seen what really looks like a definite kind of blowout of our pattern. We had a really nice little core going on there with those 4 pellets right in the middle. If we didn't scatter the rest of them, that could have been a super impressive pattern. It's still not a terrible pattern, and I guess if it consistently does the exact same thing as that over and over and over again, you could say that sure, you've got a nice hot core with a few pellets worth of leeway if you need it to. I guess that's a little bit of a thought process, but overall for me, it's just a little bit too sporadic and kind of scattered for my taste anyway. Like I've already said a number of times, I know these can do way better than that. We've seen way better than that from them before. I just think this choke combo in that 835 is blowing them open a little bit more than what we typically would see from a 690 to 695 choke in a regular standard bore 12 gauge. So I guess leave all your thoughts down below. Is that about what you expected to see? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Have you tested any of these Remington Express triple lot shells, and if so, what kind of results have you seen? Is that a pattern or a combo you would hunt with, or would you want to see it a little more tuned in and consistent than that? And what other shells or choke combos do you want to see us run when it comes to buckshot stuff? Let me know all that down below. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All the information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.